Welcome. You're on the Sunday night Impact TV call. And tonight we're going to have questions and answers, especially on making multiple offers. We are real estate investors, and we teach and we encourage. We help you set workable goals. We help you identify your weaknesses and turn them into your strengths. And that's what we're going to do tonight. If you're on the call, please put your questions in the chat, rather. And I'll start by introducing myself. I'm Doug, and this is my wife, Renee, and we are with Impact Longview.
Right.
And we have our friends with us tonight, and we're going to bring them on. Welcome, everybody. This is Dennis Henson, our founder. Tony Jardieu in Arlington and Waco. We've got Pam Cleary, who's in Prosper, or the Alliance, Decatur Alliance. Eric Short, he's with Impact Grand Prairie, and Karen Maxwell is with the corporate office and sales and marketing. And we are all real estate investors. We're all active real estate investors, and we're going to be talking about making multiple offers. So we can, rather than get right with the questions, we're going to start with a joke. And Eric's got the joke.
I've got the joke. Can you hear me?
I can.
Well, you'll be sorry. So here we go. In the spirit of Roger, tonight's joke is brought to you by, I don't know where I was going with that. Good morning, good evening. Tonight's joke involves a traveling salesman. Traveling salesman is driving down the road, country road, and he looks out his side window and he notices a bird running on the road right next to him. He's doing about 30 miles an hour, and he notices it's a chicken. A chicken is pacing him on the road. And he looks at this chicken and he notices something unusual about this chicken. It's got 3 legs. And he thinks, well, this is why it's so fast. So he presses the gas and it goes a little faster, and the chicken keeps up with him. And he goes faster, and the chicken keeps up with him. He's doing 40, 45 miles an hour. And the chicken just takes off and goes ahead of him and cuts left and goes up this farmer's driveway and runs past the farmer's house. And he sees the farmer sitting on the porch. So the salesman says, I've got to find out about this. So he goes into the driveway, drives up to the farmer's house, says, excuse me, I'm a traveling salesman. I just noticed a chicken with 3 legs run past your house. What's the story? And the farmer said, well, I'm glad you asked. We raise 3-legged chickens here. Traveling salesman said, well, why do you do that? The farmer says, well, do you enjoy a drumstick at dinner time? Yes. Salesman says, so does your wife enjoy a drumstick? Well, yeah. Well, suppose you have a guest over. They probably like a good drumstick too. And there you have 3 drumsticks, 1 bird. And the salesman says, well, that makes sense. How do they taste? And the farmer says, don't know. We haven't caught one yet.
Well,
that was great.
Well, there you go.
that was better than the last joke I heard. So, well, tonight we also have a tip of the week, and tonight Renee is going to bring the tip of the week. So go, Renee.
Okay, so tonight we're going to be talking about making multiple offers, and one of those offers could involve something called seller financing. Now, you may be wondering what's seller financing. Well, it's basically when the seller agrees to finance all or part of the deal. And in my words, they basically end up serving as the banker. Tony might have words with me on that, but that's how my simplistic mind looks at it. So what I wanted to share with you was 3 potential ways that you could get into the conversation, maybe some scripts that you might have with someone who you want to have seller finance. But the first thing you need to know is you never mention the words seller finance or owner finance to the person you're getting the house from. Don't go there. Don't mention that at all. If you do, the deal's probably going to fall apart, and you don't want that to happen. What you have to know, though, in advance is what you want to do with this property once you get it. Are you going to buy it, fix it up, and sell it quickly? Or are you going to rent it and possibly sell it on a wrap down the road? Or are you going to just wholesale it to another investor? Well, once you know that, then you know where to go. You've got to pick a script. So here's the different scripts that go with that. If you're going to buy it, fix it up, and sell it quickly, you might say something like this. Would you consider X amount of dollars for your property? And after you've determined what the lowest price is that they're willing to take, then you offer them 70 to 75% at the closing table, and you offer them the balance in a few weeks once you've done the repairs on the house and sold the home. Again, because you bought it from them, you're going to sell it to someone else. Another script option would be if you're going to rent the property and sell it on a wrap, you might say, can I offer you X amount of dollars for your property, paying you this much now, and then this much per month? Now, I'll give you an example of that. We offered a lady that lives not too far from here a deal like this. And what our split offer was on a $130,000 house, we offered her $98,000 and offered to give her $38,000 and some change down and then $175 per month for the next 343 months. So that's kind of an example of that scenario. Now, if you plan to wholesale it, you might want to say something that sounds like this. Listen, I'm going to have to check this out with my buyers, but I'm going to need a firm commitment from you to sell the house. I have a filled out contract for your review. If this is what we discussed, and could I get your signature right here? And you turn it around and you have them sign it. And that is my tip for tonight.
Great tip.
All right. Well,
Excellent.
yeah. So, making multiple offers. One of the questions that I get often is, why would I want to make multiple offers? And in my mind, if I offer someone one offer, the chances of them taking that offer are pretty low. But if I were to make 3 offers and they're pretty well spaced out, they may not even think of not taking an offer. So that's why multiple offers. Now, of course, with the offer, there needs to be something in it that they want, because that's where we're shooting. We're shooting for how can I help them get where they need to be or what they need in their situation. So with that, we have some questions probably already.
We sure do. We sure do, guys. We're going to jump right into this. Matthew Black is actually asking, what is a wraparound mortgage? Who would like to take that question? Dennis?
A wraparound mortgage is a form of secondary secondary lien. It means you leave the original mortgage in place and you wrap that with a second, so that if the original mortgage payment was $500, then you may have them pay you $700 to take care of a certain amount of money, which would be called a wrap. Now, Tony probably can answer that better than me, but hopefully that got him part of the way.
Tony, would you like to add to that?
Okay. Well, Dennis nailed it. And so the way this can operate and the way we've done these is you can do them when you acquire a property subject to the existing debt, where you're taking over the payments for the seller and you're not on that loan. You're just making the payments on behalf of the seller. And then you can turn around and sell it yourself. And as Renee said earlier, with seller financing, yes, in fact, you are the bank. So you get a second lien position. And that second lien is subordinate or behind that first lien, as Dennis said. And when you get that second lien, as Dennis also said, it wraps around the first mortgage. So it can't supersede the first mortgage. It falls in second place. And if you do them correctly, then you can make a nice spread between what your buyer is paying you and what you're paying on your underlying loan. In the case of a subject to, on the loan that you bought, the property that you bought from the seller. And it doesn't always have to be subject to. You can just buy a property. And we've done this a number of times. You can buy a property, you can fix it up, you get your long-term financing in place, mid to long-term, and then you can turn around and sell it. So you have your loan in place, and that's the first lien. And when you sell it, same situation as a minute ago, you are getting a buyer who gets ownership of the property, and you're in a second lien position, and that second lien is, quote, wrapped around that first.
Very
Hope that
good,
explains it.
Tony. That is a perfectly good explanation. I fully agree with that. Thank you so much for answering that. Okay, Dennis, in making multiple offers, what are some of the different kinds of offers you can make?
Well, I think there's 6. The first one would be all terms. And that's the one I like best, because if you can set your own terms, you can make a lot more money on the deal. An easier one to sell would be cash and terms, where you find out what they need. Maybe they need to pay off some credit cards, or maybe they have some bills or whatever. You find out exactly what they need and try to give them that amount of cash, and then get the rest with terms, monthly payments of some kind. The third one, and the least favorite of mine, would be all cash. When you cash is king, you want to keep your cash, but that would be the lowest offer I would make. The highest offer I'd make would be all terms, and then I would lower it some at cash and terms, and the cash would be the least way I'd want to do it, so I'd offer them the least amount of money. Then the next one would be an option. Now, if you tie a property up with an option, your risk is pretty much zero, or whatever you paid them for the option. And I like that too, because you've tied the property up and you can actually sell it without ever owning it. In fact, you don't have closing costs for buying it. You don't have closing costs for selling it. The title company just writes you a check. So, and sometimes you can tie a property up with an option just to see if you can sell it. Because if the option expires, you don't have to do anything else. There's not a lot of risk there. And I think Doug likes that one a lot. The next one would be a revocable option. That would be where people say, well, I don't want to take my property off the market to give you the option. So then you can come back and say, well, with a revocable option, if you sell it, then you just revoke the option. You just have to write a letter to me, and within 24 hours, the option is no longer in existence. Then the last one would be a partnership, where maybe they think the home's worth an awful lot more than it is, and it needs a lot of work. And you might form a partnership with them where you do the work and then sell it for them, or help them sell it for a larger amount of money, and then split the difference. And there's all kinds of ways that you can work that out. But those are the options. Those are the different things that you can do. All terms, cash and terms, cash, option, revocable option, and partnership. And if someone in IMT can come up with another one, I would love to hear it, because I would like to add it to my list.
Does anybody else have a suggestion on that?
Good.
Okay. Tony, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll add to what Dennis said on the seller financing, the terms offer. The terms you offer are limitless. The ideas that you can come up with are limitless. And one of the approaches that you have to understand as an investor is you need either your price or your terms. You don't have to have both. It'd be great if you get both, but you don't have to have both. But as long as you have your price or your terms, it's a workable deal for you. And those terms can be anything your imagination can create that the seller will agree to. And so one of the things that we heard from Pete Fortunato a couple of weeks ago was some really inventive ways to create terms that included even providing the seller with a van, because the seller really wanted to use some of the cash to buy a van. And so he got a van included in the deal. So you're not limited to just monthly. If you can come up with their real reason for what they want to use their cash flow for, then you can get very creative with your terms.
Pam, go right ahead.
Well, to add what Tony was talking about, I think some people may get confused. Why would you buy someone a van? Why wouldn't they just take the money and go buy it themselves? And so maybe that person didn't have the credit to go buy the van. Whereas, like what Pete said, he went and bought the van for the guy because there was some cash involved and stuff. So that's all.
I remember him saying that he didn't even have to buy the van. He handed the guy the keys to his van that night.
And then he had to get a ride home.
Yeah. Here's my van. No cash was involved. He said, here's the van. I get the option to buy your house down the road. And the guy said, okay.
But the other thing about being creative about all this, talking about what it is that the seller needs and everything, sometimes it still comes to a credit thing. And people, because I get asked all the time, well, why would you buy something for somebody to make the deal work? And the answer is because that person usually doesn't have the credit to go purchase that, whereas you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're problem solvers. Keep that in mind. We solve problems. Okay, let's see what the next question is. Doug, when trying to figure out the after repair value, the ARV, for multifamily, do you try to find the property with same bedrooms and same square footage? Can you kind of give us some advice there?
Well, it depends. It really depends on how many doors you're talking about. Tony, you've done multiple deals, or actually you've done the banking probably, or seen the banking. How does this all work?
Yeah, well, we've also purchased multifamily up to 4 units. And so it works differently when you have a multifamily up to 4 units versus over 5 and over. If you're up to 4 units, the ARV is still calculated on a sales comparison approach. So you're still using comps. Small area. When we purchased properties down in Waco a few years ago, we purchased 2 triplexes on the same day. And it is really difficult in a smaller community. Waco had, at the time, about 160,000 people. It's difficult to find triplexes that have sold. Yes. So what I did was I contacted a couple of realtors and I asked them to provide all of the triplex and quadplex sales in the entire area of Waco. I didn't limit the mileage for the last 2 years. And one of the realtors gave me some really good data on that. And then I took that data, I put it in a spreadsheet, and I carved out the newer models because they were around Baylor University and my properties were not. And so then I did my own sales comparison. And what I found was we did buy both of those properties, and we eventually got long-term financing from a bank, 2 different banks, is my numbers were spot on with my assessment of ARV because I had the entire market. And so the appraisers were going to use the same data that I had. Excellent. And they weren't going to, and our properties were older, so they're not going to use new properties, but it was all based on sales comparison. If you're talking about 5 or more, then you're going to be looking at what is called a discounted cash flow, and that can involve cap rates, but you're going to look at the stream of cash flow involved. We as investors, even for properties that are duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, we're going to look at the cash flow, but just understand the ARV is going to be based on a sales comparison.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Karen, you're on mute.
Oh,
Sorry. I said, thank you very much, Tony. That was very well explained. Appreciate that. And I was asking Pam if she had anything she would like to add to that. You're on mute.
Well, because I didn't hear what you talking. The only thing that, to add to that is, when you're looking at multifamily, like Tony said, when you get over the 5 doors, as we call them, a lot of people that are going to loan money are going to look at the cap rate. And a cap rate is the capitalization of the return on your money. It's the NOI, the net operating income, purchased by the property asset. And the higher the cap rate, then the better the return. And so here's a good example, because people get this confused. So look, I'll take our RV park as an example. Our yearly income on the RV park is around, when we first started and got it, it was around $78,000 a year, and we want $2 million for it. So what you do is you take the $2,000 and you divide it by the 78,000. That comes out to around a 4% cap rate. So that's not really, investors. It depends on which side of the coin you're on. If you're an investor and you're wanting to buy that, that's great on your side. As a seller, no, that's not great, on your side, because you can try to load the 2 million. So in order to get a better cap rate, that income, that net operating income annual needs to be higher. So if we were at closer to $186,000, you take that and then divide the 2 million into it. Now you're at closer to a 10% cap rate. And that's what you're looking at when you're out there borrowing money, talking about cap rates. Hopefully I explained that.
Well, it definitely is a different animal between single family and multifamily. I think that you both did a great job of answering that question. I hope we answered it to their understanding.
yeah.
I think you explained what NOI was, correct?
Net
That was our
operating,
next question.
it's net operating income.
And how is that figured?
You take your operating expenses, and you take subtract your operating expenses from your net income, from your income, and then you come up with your net income. So you have your income, you have your operating expenses, subtract the operating expenses from the income, there's your net income.
Thank you so much for answering that. Great. Okay. Let's see. John McEnroe would like to ask, if someone wants to go out and find some deals, how much would one of us charge to help close that deal?
That's a good question.
If somebody brought us a deal, I'll just answer that and say, John, we love you, and you're a huge impact on Real Impact, especially Real Impact Longview, but all the groups really. And give one of us a call, and we need to talk about getting you into our training program, because that's what's really going to help you. But how about doing a JV partnership with someone, saying, hey,
Not only that, one of us may want the deal.
And then you can just sell it to us.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
When you have something like that come up, just give one of us a call. Give Doug and Renee a call. Give me a call. Just, we'll help you.
That's right.
Something to help you. Yeah.
Because that's what we do. We want everyone to be successful real estate investors. So don't be afraid to run it by us.
I called Dennis yesterday, didn't I, Dennis?
You did? Did I help you?
Yes, you did.
All right.
Got an appointment set up Monday morning. I need money.
We never stop learning. Just keep that in mind. Okay. And our next question is, Matthew Black would like to know, who gets first position on the mortgage? I think that was referring to the subject, the wraparound,
Yes.
and we may have answered that in our answer. Tony, you want to kind of explain who gets first position in which scenario?
Yes. So, Matthew, with a wrap, the entity or individual who is doing the wrap is in a second lien position. They are wrapping the first. So if you happen to own the property and you have the loan on it, your lender has first lien position. When you go to sell it, you sell it with seller financing, the end buyer has, like in our case, when we do these, sorry, I'm not explaining it right. When I'm explaining, it's confusing. When we do these, we already have a loan in existence for a property. That lender has first lien. Then when we turn around to sell it, we're in a second lien position. So if that's still not clear, let us know. We'll try to.
So Tony,
Yes.
okay, so we did a subject to deal just recently, and we had the deed on the house, right? The mortgage stayed in the original seller's name, okay? And then we ended up later selling it, but if we had wrapped it, the first lien would have been with the original mortgage holder,
Yeah.
right?
They're the first position.
So that's first position.
The answer is kind of simple. The first lien's already in place in
Right.
most cases. So who has the first lien? You just have to ask who has the first lien. You ask when you're dealing with someone, and if you're selling it and wrapping it, then maybe you have the first lien or your bank has the first lien. But in most cases, the first lien's already in place, and it's really easy to find who has that.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let me just also add that not all second liens are wraps.
Right.
So don't walk away thinking all second liens are wraps, because you personally can have a first lien on a house and then you can get a second lien on your same house, and you're not wrapping that first
Right.
lien.
It's a form of secondary mortgage.
Yeah.
Right.
Perfect. Very easily explained. Thank y'all so much for your input. The next question is from John McEnroe. He asks, when cold calling, should you have a number ready for the offer? Well, I would like to explain it very simply. John, if you don't know that your seller even wants to sell the property, or if you can even get a hold of the seller, I wouldn't waste my time analyzing the deal and preparing an offer. So that's my simple answer. I would suggest concentrate on cold calling, finding out who's motivated, finding out who you're going to talk more with, go to their property, see the property. Now, between the appointment, the phone call and the appointment, that's when I analyze my deal. And then I go there prepared already with a number in my mind and on my paper as to where I need to be. Then if the property is in the same condition that I expected it to be in, then I'm going to go by my numbers. But if the property's in worse condition, I'm definitely going to revamp those numbers so that it fits to where I need it to be. Anybody else have anything to add to that? Dennis, go right ahead.
When you're cold calling, what you're really trying to do is see if there's something there. If there's something there, then you want to go see it. So we have an acronym that we use in our training called WHAT, W-H-A-T. What's it worth? How much you owe? What's your asking price? And tell me why you're selling. Those questions will let you know if there's really something there to take more time. Like Karen said, you don't want to waste your time on the deal if you don't even know if there's a deal there. So cold calling is really easy, and you can hire someone to do it and have them ask those questions. And then if they answer them correctly, that person can get in touch with you and say, here's a deal that you may want to pursue. That saves you a lot of time.
Yes, exactly. Thank you so much. Awesome. Okay, our next question is also from John McEnroe. Hey guys, make sure you're dropping your questions in the chat. We are free to answer anything tonight, but tonight we're specifically talking about making multiple offers, but we're not limited to that. So just go ahead and ask away. Just drop your question in the chat. So Pam, John McEnroe would like to ask, did you get the house for your plumber? And if so, how did you do it?
First of all, I want to say I'm excited that someone even watched me post that at 6 o'clock Saturday morning or whenever it was posted. So we are still negotiating the process. It has not gone away. The situation is two girls inherited their moms, their grandmothers, and their mother's house, and they're very emotional tied to this property. So at first they were not going to deal with investors. And I explained to them the night before I left, I said, well, you think you're not dealing with an investor. I said, but a real estate agent is an investor. They're going to make their 6% on no matter what, how you look at it. And you can have multiple friends. So making a long story short, we showed, and my plumber showed up, and we were there for about an hour and a half. And how these two girls work is about every 4 hours we're charring numbers. So they have to sit and think about it. So anyway, we don't have it yet, but hopefully we're going to tie it up after I make my commitment with the bank on Monday morning. So
Awesome.
there we go.
Awesome. Well, we look forward to hearing your report next week.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about just giving them almost what they want because of the equity. It just keeps climbing.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. All right. Well, let's see. I think I'm running out of questions, guys. I need some more questions. So would it be okay if we just shared some stories about what we've done this week since Pete Fortunato was here? I mean, everybody's mind was blown last weekend. And I'd like to hear if anybody put any of that awesome information that we heard last weekend to work this week.
Sure.
All right, Tony.
So one of the houses that I went to with Pete, Cyndee and I, my wife Cyndee and I, and Pete visited a property, and I mentioned this last week that this property is a property I would like this property, but it was a realtor that was showing it, and the broker wouldn't allow us to go see the seller or talk to the seller. So I threw him a cash offer out in my terms, and they immediately refused the terms, as a lot of realtors would do. And my cash offer was significantly lower than what they wanted. So I turned around and I used the method that I never heard of before, but Pete told in the car. And that was, I called the young realtor who was showing me this property. And I said, do you want this property? And he said, yes. And I said, doesn't look like I'm going to go anywhere with it because you're not allowing me to talk to, or your broker won't allow us to talk to the seller and all that other stuff. And I said, all right, why don't you buy it? And he said, well, I don't have the money for the down payment and the closing costs. And I said, well, I'll give you the money. And I threw him an offer and I emailed it to him because he wasn't quite understanding it. I said, I will give you $10,000. You don't have to pay it back. And you can have use of the property for no less than 10 years. You can get an FHA loan that will cover the $10,000 will cover the down payment and your closing costs for an FHA loan. And then you can rent it. You can house hack it. You can live in it. And you will sign an option, $10,000, that allows me to purchase the property back in no less than 10 years and in no more than 30 years. And when I told him this, there was silence on the other line. and then finally, when he spoke, he said, can you put that in writing? Because he wasn't getting it. And so I did. And I said, look, think about this, put your questions together, and then let's talk first part of next week, which is hopefully Monday or Tuesday this coming week. So I had never heard that before. I really like that idea. And I really want to help this young guy out. It would be his first property. So
that's awesome, Tony. Thank you. That's great. Dennis?
Well,
I'm sorry. Doug, I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, with the options, the house that we were talking about a while ago, Renee was talking about this house on Gardner Mitchell. And we have actually a 12-month option with this lady. Mm-hmm. We got it for 130. And today I looked and I figure it's probably worth 230 now. So just in the less than a year, it's skyrocketed. So in 10 years, imagine what Tony's deal will be like. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about creating wealth, and if he closes this deal, it's just going to create more wealth for him, because he's going to be able to buy this house in 10 years for a really great price.
Right.
That's true.
And, you know, the really cool thing about the options contract is, you know, even if we never get this property on Gardner, Mitchell, and the Longview area, when we record the deed, if another realtor comes along later and talks them into selling, that deed creates a title flaw and will enable us to make some income off of that. So option contracts are extremely powerful, but very flexible for those of us who are trying to do the buying.
Mm-hmm.
And how much does an option contract cost, Doug and Renee?
It depends. The option fee can be $10, can be $5. I usually use a $100 bill, a nice, crisp, new $100 bill, because it just looks good. We know it's not worth a lot, and we know that it's going to be worth less tomorrow, but it just looks good, and it's really kind of
It carries some weight.
Well, it's the biggest bill we can get our hands on anyway, so that's what I use.
Awesome.
So Karen, when you asked how much is the option contract, is that what you're asking? How much
Yes.
is the option fee?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because a lot of investors are afraid to put a property under contract, especially their first property, because they feel like they're going to have to close on it. And what if I can't? What if I bought it wrong? What if I, their fear is holding them back? Somebody just had a meeting about fears holding you back.
Yeah.
Pam?
Yeah.
Well, no, that was just raising my hand because we had a meeting talking about fear, but talking about what's going on and talking about the option. This is not an option contract, but it's a part of the option in the contract. And you can't think about, well, you have to step over that box and you have to get into the game and you have to do it. And one thing that we're doing and everything, and we know that we want that contract and we're trying to beat out everybody else, we may put a $10,000 in the option part of the contract. A lot of people don't understand that option period in that contract is one of the most important paragraphs of the whole contract, and you really need to understand that part of the contract. And so when we're putting up $10,000 in an option, we know that we want that property, and we've been able to beat other people out because we have put up such a high amount, in that option.
So let me interject here, because we may be getting people confused. There's two different kinds of options that we're talking about here. There's one that's in the 1 to 4 family contract, which is an option for a number of days to be able to cancel. So
Right.
you may be, most times you might put up $10 or $100 or $150. And what Pam was saying is she might put $2,000 in there. But that's a different kind of option than the option that I was talking about, where you're offering the option for you to purchase the property, not the option on the purchase contract. So
Right.
You need to keep those two separate in your mind. Don't be confused.
Absolutely. Thank you for that clarification. Dennis, did you want to share something that came up this week from Pete's event?
The only thing that came up for me this week was getting back in touch with all of the people to make sure that they got all the things that we promised them, and getting in touch with the sponsors. But I do want to say this: I sure got a lot of positive feedback. I don't think I've ever had a meeting where more people got in touch with me and said, "Oh man, that was just such a wonderful meeting. We just learned so much." And the sponsors were thrilled because there were a lot of people there. So I was pleased with that. But I haven't done a deal this week with any of the things that he brought up. I was impressed with Tony's story about that. I thought that was really great.
Awesome. Great. All right. Our next question is Matthew Black is asking, if I wholesale a property, will I get to see the HUD since I'm not the actual end buyer per se? Who wants to take that one? Pam?
Sure you will. You'll get to, I mean, because you're going to end up, depends on how it's structured and everything, but you're part of it once it closes, and you'll become like a consultant fee, but yes, you will get to see the final HUD on both sides.
Yeah. So in my wholesaling experience, I know that it was my job to control the deal. So I wanted to make sure that before the final HUDs were sent out, that my seller was getting what I promised them and my buyer was getting what I promised them. Because oftentimes if you do something kind of creative like that, they'll just do what they normally do and they'll mess up and charge, like, for example, they might charge the seller their part of the closing fees. And that's not what my agreement was. My agreement was that the buyer would pay the closing fees. So I always like to look over the HUD prior to it getting sent out because it saves a lot of confusion. And when there's confusion, people get nervous. And I want my transactions to be as smooth and stress-free as possible. So I always control my deals. But always get to look at it. And then, yes, there's other options for like blind HUDs and things like that. And I'm always transparent. So I lay it on the table.
Great answer, Karen.
Anybody else want to add? Nope. Okay. Dennis, go right ahead.
Well, I think we need to answer the question, where's Roger?
Roger is getting a much needed vacation. Oh, goodness. I hope they're having a great time.
Well, I think they went to hear Andre Rieu, a concert, and that was on Facebook. It was really, they had such a wonderful time there. And then they went to Disney World, Walt Disney World. That's one of Roger's favorite places. He's a big Disney fan. And hopefully they, like you said, hopefully they had a wonderful time. They should be back soon. They were traveling today, but we miss him. He'll be back next Sunday.
We definitely miss him. Miss you, Roger. We hope you're watching, and we hope we're making you proud. All right. Let's see. The next question. Tony, will you answer this for us, please? Matthew is asking, how many properties can you get financed through FHA? And then his follow-up question is, and how often?
So Matthew, you can, through your lifetime, as many as you want, but the catch is normally you can only have one out at a time. And so FHA is Federal Housing Administration, and they have great down payment terms, 3.5%. It is base credit score. You can go down to, I think it's 580 on your credit score and still get a 3.5% down payment loan at FHA. But you can only have one out at a time, and you need to live in it for at least a year. There are a few exceptions. Those in a divorce, then you can apply for, and you're moving out of the house, you can apply for another one. So Matthew, you might have that going for you. But that's the only way, other than a couple of other minor exceptions, one out at a time, but you can apply for a number of them over your lifetime. And can I do a little bit of a shout out for a couple of people?
Absolutely. Okay. We love shout outs.
Yeah. So we're talking tonight about making multiple offers, and obviously we're addressing questions that have come up as well. And these are all investor related questions. And the way all of this can happen for you, or it won't happen, is if you tell people you're a real estate investor. So the folks who tell people that they're a real estate investor, they're getting the opportunity to make multiple offers. If you don't tell anybody, you're not going to be able to make multiple offers. Let people know what you're doing. And so here's my shout out. In the past 2, we started Samuel and LaToya started weeks ago. And they did the most amazing thing. They were driving in Arlington, and they passed a store, and they saw 2 people coming out of, and LaToya recognized those 2 people. They were on a show, an HGTV show called, I think it's called It's in Flop, and it's in Fort Worth. And LaToya has watched that show. What they did was they stopped that car, turned around, went into the parking lot, and went and introduced themselves to these local TV stars, and told them they are investors. So pretty awesome for folks who've just been doing this a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And the other shout out, it's amazing. The other shout out is to our other new student, Gary Mack, Waco. And Gary was telling me this week after just one lesson that he has already reached out to in excess of 20 people, including realtors, letting them know what he's doing. And obviously there are a lot of realtors out there, and a lot of them say they're investor friendly, but they may not know about you unless you tell them who you are. So my shout out to LaToya, Samuel, and Gary. Way to go, guys.
Great.
Awesome. That's great. I'm going to give them a hand.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's one of the first things that we train people on is to say that you're a real estate investor. Let everybody know. It's like going to the doctor and saying, okay, doc, what's wrong with me? But not telling him what your symptoms are. How can he help you? So if you let people know that you're a real estate investor and that you solve and you solve problems with real estate, and you listen to people and then just solve their problems. And also, if you let people know, then if they know someone that has a problem with property, they can say, you know what, can you talk to my sister who's whatever her issue is and solve that? That's the way I got probably, I don't know, at least 25% of my deals that I've done over the last 8 years is solving people's problems because people know who I am and they know what I do. So, and also, like for example, myself, I don't have rental properties this time, but I'm doing a flip and I've done a lot of wholesaling and I've managed rentals in the past. I know investors. So if you have a property and you need advice on what to do with it, you can get with me or anyone with real impact, and we can help you find the right person to talk to, or we might buy the property ourselves. Right. So just remember, keep that in mind. Okay, next question. Samuel Randall, that's one of your new student, Tony. He would like to know, what is the best way to calculate and know if a rental property will cash flow good? And I would like to say, cash flow good, that is dependent on the individual person. Some people want a little bit of cash flow to park their money, and some people want a lot of cash flow to be able to make sure they can pay all their expenses. But I'm open to what you guys have to say. How do you determine if the property is one you're going to hold?
Wow.
Dennis?
Well, I don't care. I really don't. I buy a property, and someone comes to me, I say, well, what do you want to do? It's kind of like watching Pawn Stars, He says, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to, you want to pawn it, or you want to sell it? If they want to rent it, I'll rent it to them. I'll find out, I'll know already what the best rent is for that property. If they want to own or finance, I had a lady call me last night. She wanted to move to Dallas, and she said, how can I get a loan? I said, well, find a house that you want, and I'll buy it for you, and you pay me down payment, and then I'll own or finance it. So it's, for me personally, I really don't care. I just want to make a profit on the property. So if they want to rent it, I'll rent it to them. If they want to own or finance it, easy rent to own, whatever. It's fine for me. I'm sure other people do it differently, but that's worked well for me in the past. I want to solve their problem, whatever it is.
And
Exactly.
if I can jump in,
Absolutely, Eric.
I had a sub too that for a few years just made enough money to clear the rent that I owed to the mortgage. And as I was able to move that renter out, I brought another renter in and increased the amount they were paying monthly. And over the number of years I owned it, of course, it increased in value. So when it was time to, sadly, I had this before Pete Fortunato introduced me to the phrase, why would you like to sell a nice house like this? When I did finally cash out that house, it had increased in value considerably, even though I only started with a cash flow of $100 per month.
That's great. Yeah, we actually got into one time that we were almost barely breaking even. If they had had any kind of maintenance request, we were going to be sunk. And actually, the air conditioning, the central air and heat, did go out, so we were upside down that year. But fortunately, that wasn't our only property, so we had other properties to help, cover that for that. But now that property is appreciated. I think the last time I checked, it was around 190, and we bought it for 80, and it probably for 70. I mean, we probably owe 70 on it now. So appreciation is so important. As a matter of fact, I want to let you know that Roger just gave us an update, and they are in hour 23 of a 3-day drive.
Oh my God.
I don't envy you at all, Roger. No texting and driving, as John pointed out. Our last question, I think this is probably the last one we have time for. Then we need to get to our few announcements. But Nina Castro has the question: How does a shared appreciation mortgage work? Anybody?
No,
Tony?
Yeah, Doug, do you know?
no, I don't know.
Okay. So appreciation is the lender will give you a break on the interest rate in exchange for a share of the equity when you sell the house.
Oh.
Matter of fact,
So you
I
get-
just did a deal where we did exactly that. So
Yeah.
we gave our lender an equity share of the profit. It's a great way to do business.
Right.
Yeah. So you get a discounted interest rate straight for you, and you share in the equity. You'll see it with the acronym SAM,
Sam,
Shared Appreciation Mortgage. Yeah.
Can
Thank
you
you
give
so
us
much.
a real live example of that, Tony? Just kind of give us an idea of what that really looks like with real numbers.
If you had, say you had a $250,000 house,
Right.
and if the interest rate that you're normally going to get, well, rates are obviously rising right now, but let's say that you were going to get a 5% interest rate. But now, because you're sharing it with the lender, the equity piece is you can get a lower interest rate, might be 1 or 2 percentage points lower for a percentage of the equity you will get when you go to sell it. So you share in that equity at the time of sale. Most mortgages have a life of 7 years. It's called duration. They last about 7 years. That's typically what happens historically, because people who own either sell it or refinance. And so when that happens, then when you sell, you're going to share that equity with the lender.
What's
absolutely.
a normal percentage rate that someone would ask or that y'all would agree on to share?
Oh, it's going to really that lender to do that.
Remember,
Okay.
it's all negotiable. It's just like when we
Right.
buy houses. It's just terms.
Yeah.
So
Very
Yeah.
cool. Thank you.
awesome. Okay. Well, I'm going to end my part with the fact that we are going on our Mastermind Getaway in September of this year. So if you would like to join us and the rest of the Real Impact team, we'll all be there, plus many of our students, plus, oh gosh, it's just crazy. Last year we had 60 people with us in Cancun. And this year we're going to be going to Dreams Jade Cancun, September the 21st through the 25th. And it's $1,195. That covers 2 adults and 2 children under the age of 12. And it's all inclusive. You do have to pay for your airfare and your transportation to the hotel. But I cannot tell you enough. If you haven't been on a Mastermind Getaway, you need to join us. We're going to have many experts there. I will be there. Dennis will be there, as well as Roger Pascal, Randy Hughes, and we are always adding more and more
And
experts to our. I'm sorry, did I miss one?
Tammy Chastain also.
Oh, Tammy Chastain. Oh, awesome. Look forward to meeting her. And like I said, each of the IMTs will be there, and we hope that you will consider joining us. And I'm telling you, it is life-changing. All right.
Well, we thank you for joining us tonight. I think that we we've already gotten our tickets to the
Yep.
Mastermind
So do
Getaway.
I.
Got our tickets, got our plane tickets. Can't wait to go. It's
Yeah.
going to be
How
so
much-
much.
How much was your airfare?
Yeah, good question. Well, we're flying straight out from Gregg County Airport, so we don't even have to drive to DFW. No
Good.
parking charges or anything. I think it was about right around 700 total
For both
for
of us.
two of us.
For two.
Oh, awesome.
Two.
Send me the details because I couldn't find it for less than 500 for one. So send me the details.
I will text you a copy of my ticket right now, girl.
I'm all about flying out of Gregg County instead of driving to Dallas.
Right?
All
You don't
about
have
it.
to drive to
Yep.
Dallas.
Yep.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us tonight. If there's, I don't think really have a lot of time for more questions, but join us next Sunday and we'll have more of the same.
And take action because that's how deals get done.
That's right.
That's right. That's right. Good night, everybody.
Right.
Not
All right. Great call.